Hi, I'm Dean Sage.
And I'm Jack Curvin.
And this is Show Me Your Deck,
a podcast where we explore the intersections of oracles and chakras,
using our original decks to create new insights. There's some kitten magic happening in the background. I'm hoping it doesn't come out on the recording.
Kitten magic. Oh, as soon as you said that, my kitten started making magic.
Episode 25, Kitten Magic.
Okay, hold on. Kitten magic. Hey. Okay, all right. It's lots of magic today.
Lots of magic today.
We might have some fluff on the dice.
Well, my study houses the Robo Kitty litter box, the Robo litter box, and it like I'll be on meetings and I'll just hear this like shh 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 shh. I'm like,
yay.
Okay, yay. Here we go. It's exciting.
He's hovering. If he nibbles my toes and I squeal, that will be why.
The new kittens are biters.
Are they?
Yes. The sugar is very, very playful, very, very active, and bites through your phone. Spice bit the metal straw. We use reusable straws. So Spice bit the metal straw. Sugar, like there's a little. We bought a cat tower with a little toy on a spring, a little ball on a string, and he bites at the spring. And I'm like, that's metal, honey.
Yeah, mine does that too.
That's metal.
Actually, it's funny you mention it because last night Pierre ripped the fluffy Bobo off of one of his towers, which is exactly that. It's a big ball that sits on top of a spring that swings back and forth, and he has surgically removed the fluffy Bobo.
I don't know if it's a ragdoll thing because one of our older cats is a ragdoll, and she will strategically chew things. Like she chewed a stick in half, like the little fishing stick where you can dangle things on the end for them. She was like, "Oh no," and she's like,
"The stick. We'll take the stick. We don't need the dangle thing. We want the stick."
She's like, "I'm gonna bite clean through this stick."
So yeah, we have lots of ragdoll magic, and outside now we've got puppy barking magic. So we have furry friends all over. And I just saw one of yours run by in the background. So we have furry friends galore today.
Furry friends. All right. Well, let's see what the cards want to talk about. Let's see if the cards want to talk about cats or not.
Okay. Well, they want to start with deck number 3, the intersections deck, and they want to say. Card number 30. That doesn't sound familiar. Have we ever pulled a 30 from my deck? I don't know if we have.
Remember.
I don't remember a 30 ever coming up for me. 30. Oh, what a beautiful card. Oh, gorgeous. Okay, so this is I say Vishuddha, throat chakra, aqua, as it is affected by third eye, dark blue, I see, ajna. So I say, or I communicate, as it's influenced by I see. So the way in which you express yourself and how that's influenced by the way you perceive the world and what you know.
So there's an outward focus to start with, both in communication, right? Using your throat, your voice, but also in your interconnectedness and your understanding of the world. So we're kind of starting off in a more intellectual place today than we had been in the past.
Sure is a pretty card though. Oh my god, this aqua and blue together are so pretty. Oh my god.
Well, and quick plug, if you're not watching this on YouTube, you can go to YouTube and see the pretty cards that we talk about. So
pretty. So I say, as influenced by I see.
I see it. I say I'm just imagining the monkeys, like they hear no evil, speak no evil, see no evil. For some reason, that's just what's popping in my head right now.
No, I mean that's good. But here, I'm going to hold the card up for you to see. See, it's this one.
Oh yes, I do remember that one. Yeah,
it's so pretty.
And the one chakra looks like a sun, like a star burst.
Yeah, for Vishuddha. So, all right, starting in a communicative manner.
Yeah, I think how often are our words influenced by our worldview versus how often do the words simply flow out on instinct and are not quite attached to maybe our values or our personal mission. What's the amount of words that we speak in a day that are truly connected to interconnectedness, that are connected to our views of the world? That's an interesting place to start with.
Mm-hmm. And in the process of having a conversation and communicating, what other information is coming in that influences that from others as well? So in the process of sharing, what gets changed?
Right, you're imbibing, you're bringing things into your worldview and communicating them outwards. So it's as much, not so much listening. Oh, there's not really a listening chakra, but it's that sort of, what are you shaping within yourself that's creating the world that you then are interacting with? Because it's a very personal thing. The way that we view the world is very unique. Everyone's got their own sort of filter. I was doing some training earlier this week, and they talked about our perception filter and how it controls kind of what goes through, right? What we take in and what bounces off, or what gets neglected or overlooked. And it all has to do with how we perceive things. So even in our communication with the world, we're seeing the world in a different way maybe than someone else. So I think there's a reminder here to pause for a moment and think about how the way you view things is affecting your communication, how the way that you interact with the world, or how the way that you experience the world and the worldview that you have of it influences what we say, what we communicate with to others. So our connectedness, our interconnectedness with others, or lack thereof maybe, is influencing how we're communicating with others. And those two just go hand in hand.
Yep. So the reminder here is to be aware of the information that you're taking in and how that is coloring the way you express yourself. So just be aware.
What's the image for this intersection?
You mean from the haiku?
Yeah. What the picture that you use for this in the book?
This, I'd have to go grab the book. I don't remember offhand. I know that this one uses a boat as the image, and whether or not the winds are headwinds, tailwinds, or crosswinds. So the ways in which the conversations you have either push back against your ideas, reinforce your ideas, or turn you over completely.
Interesting. So like a real spiritual wind sort of
like blowing. Actual conversations and the way those conversations change you. Some of your conversations you'll have with people, when people push back against your ideas, I would consider that a headwind in this instance. If what somebody says bolsters what you're saying, then that would be a tailwind pushing you forward. They might respond with something that completely knocks you over, and that's fine too. But if that's a crosswind and you get, rolled at sea, it can be devastating. But if you recover from it, hopefully you do, then you know how to navigate that storm all the better. So that was the image I was using, was a sailboat on a windy sea.
Sailboat on a windy sea. Okay. So you're not necessarily lost, you're adrift. And that kind of makes sense for kind of how we find ourselves. We're not unsurrounded, but we're also not completely, partnered up all the time, or there's not always someone in our boat with us. We're on the ocean, and sometimes it's dark, scary, and sometimes it's light and beautiful, and the interactions of others around us, as we are all drops in the cosmic ocean, so to speak.
Yeah. So to answer your question, it's not the sailboat necessarily; it's wave. So the way air moves across water. The haiku is about waves. I'm looking at the haiku right now. Do you want the haiku, or is that gonna?
No, I think we've got the imagery. Okay, I think that's the important part.
Air on water makes waves.
Air on water makes waves. That makes sense. Well, let's get a little bit more context. We've got a nice setting. Let's see what we've got going on in some more detail. All right, we've got the 4 of waves, so quite appropriate. Still,
you just pulled 4 of waves?
4 of waves, yeah.
Oh, how cool. Okay.
So this is still your waters with intention, not fear. Still your waters with intention, not fear.
Still your waters with intention, not fear. Okay. All right. Yep. Got it.
So I think this is about courage, maybe to speak, courage to interact with the world.
Pause a moment. What does 4 signify in the
there's a wholeness to it. 4 pillars.
Okay.
Most of the cards have something to do with like a home. The waves or the cups is a little bit more to do with do you go forward or pull back? Is there something better just around the corner that you're not looking at? Are you afraid to make a choice because you're in a sort of sedate place and you don't want to move forward? There's lots of different interpretations for the 4 of Cups. I chose this one because it's more about if you're going to stay still, if you're not going to act, don't do that because you are afraid to make a motion. Do it with intention to stay still, to not move forward, to let maybe this opportunity go by, but not because you're afraid to take it, but because you're saying this isn't the one for me.
Or to prepare yourself, like with a dancer, we set our feet. And there's a moment of stillness, and then you jump.
Mm-hmm. So this is a pause. There's a sense of pause sometimes with the 4s.
Okay, all right. So read the card again.
Still your waters with intention, not fear.
Okay. And within the context of conversations, that's actually an interesting... Okay, I just made a connection there. So while we're having these conversations and exchanging this information, expressing ourselves and being informed by all this information, now we have a reminder to pause. Sometimes you need to think before you speak. And sometimes the idea you have in your head does not necessarily need to be born out into the world through your mouth. Think before you speak.
Yeah, the 3 gates, which I need to actually post on my computer somewhere because it does come up a lot, but... The idea of, does it need to be said right now? Does it need to be said by you? Is it true? Are you
the one who needs to deliver this truth?
And that's hard. Like, that's very hard. That's a very hard reminder because there are times where it doesn't need to come from you and you have to sit on it or you have to share it maybe in private with someone so that it can come from them.
Yeah, because you might share a truth that somebody just can't receive because it's from you. It just is what it is.
Well, going back to my training, so I've been saying things to my partner, the director that I work with, and it hasn't quite been getting through. Like some of it's been getting through, but not all of it. And then we were at the training, and the trainer said the same thing that I've been saying. And my partner was like, "Oh, okay, I'm gonna do that." Like, she was emailing at like 3 a.m. I'm like, "You got to do this in later. People can't wake up to your emails. Like that's just it's not good. It's not good." And she was like, kind of okay, and then the trainer was like, "You can't send emails at 3 a.m." She's like, "Oh, I will use this in later now." I was like, "God damn it." But no, it's a very real reality that sometimes it isn't meant to come from you.
Yep. And you don't necessarily have to understand why.
The pause here is interesting because for me, the waves of the emotions, right? Cups is emotions. So the waters that I'm talking about are your emotional, waves, the emotional churn that flows within you. And I kind of also get this like sense of icy freezing up. So I think it's not about like freezing up. So if you're talking to someone and you just freeze up, right? And you shut down and you don't communicate anything, that's, stilling waters with fear. So fear causes those waters to freeze and hold still and not interact, not share, not communicate.
Yeah. And it's also difficult to not speak from a place of emotion if that emotion is in some way destabilizing. So if the waves are about emotions and we're looking at a pause and thinking about what kind of information does and does not need to come up in this conversation, then it sounds like the reminder is also pointing toward considering what you're going to say in the heat of a moment. Because it can be so gratifying to tell that bitch off. However, will it actually be helpful? And sometimes the answer is yes. And sometimes the answer is no.
I saw a reel about a man who hires himself out. So if your boss is horrible, evil, or just needs to be cussed out, this man will come to your workplace and do it for you for a fee.
No, I've been thinking about a gig. What kind of a gig could I do? I could go and read people for filth for money. I go in and just pretend to be a really upset client.
So yeah, it can feel gratifying. There's this element of fear, and fear for me is the root chakra. It unbalances you. So if you've got no grounding, right? You've got nothing for the water to sort of sit and be formed by, then you're just, emotions swirling everywhere out of balance. So when you lose your grounding, you lose the stable base that your emotions can be held within. And so now you're afraid and your emotions are running wild, but that's not the place that you need to operate from right now.
This is an appropriate reminder for me because we have been living within a very overwrought emotional time in American history. So I don't know when you in the future will be hearing this, but just so you know, right now, things be cray.
Yes.
And people be saying cray things. And honestly, I've had to unplug and unsubscribe and block all sorts of media because just as your partner should not be sending emails at 3 a.m., most news agencies shouldn't be sending mail at all. And I'm tired of waking up to this world of horrifying news. And I've had to completely unplug from all of that because it was affecting the way I was talking to other people. It was that information I was taking in was coloring the way I was expressing myself. Sometimes we need a break from having any kind of input, especially right now, because it doesn't really matter which side is talking. All of it is so upsetting right now that I just don't want to hear any of it because it destabilizes me. I'm feeling lately quite uneven in my own emotions, talking about the waves. And I'm afraid that if I say much of anything right now, a lot of people's feelings are going to get hurt. And that pause that I need right now is from practically all emails, practically all conversations, because sometimes I just don't really care what people think. It's not that I don't care, it's that I care so much that I have to not care because they're going to stress me out. And the pause I need is to not hear anything right now. So
there could be something about disconnection here, or metering connection. That not everything needs to pass through your filter, like I was kind of mentioning earlier from the training.
Well, not everything needs to be said. Some of the stuff that people say just for clickbait or whatever, it's like, oh, honestly, I'm so tired of.
Well, but I think because this is an internal focus, this is, focusing on the individual. I think, it's fair to say that not everything needs to be heard.
Yeah.
Not all spiritual winds that blow your direction are meant to move you, and you can let those pass over you.
Or what if you just take your sails down every now and then? So you're not buffeted so much.
Not every wind is yours.
Yeah, purposefully disconnecting, purposefully disengaging, not from a lack of care, but from a need for rest.
Well, there's only so much you can take in. There's only so much world building, core image, root metaphor build. Like there's only so many things that you can do in a time, and it's exhausting. Spiritual work of any kind is exhausting because it is working on the core of your being, and you can only do so much foundation work because you have to hoist the whole building in order to work on the foundation.
Yes.
It's tiring, and there's so much energy spent just keeping yourself balanced while you do it, because it can be very unbalancing. Again, to work on your foundation, you can be very unbalanced very quickly, especially when you've got those crosswinds that you were talking about, stuff that's threatening to kind of blow you over. It might be something that you need to hear, but how you imbibe it and how you take it into your sails, and how do you use it to turn, all of that is hard work.
Yeah, it is.
Let's get another piece of this puzzle.
From yours or from mine?
Let's go from yours.
All right. We're going to be pulling from deck number 4, the haiku deck. And we're going to be using number 12. So we're going to be down in the emotions.
Appropriate.
Oh, wow. Okay. How funny. So, yes, we're in metal, Svadhisthana. That's I feel. It's orange. And how it's influenced by third eye, blue, water, ajna, I see. Okay. So how your emotions and sensations and instincts, how all that is influenced by the way you perceive the world and what you learn and what you know. The haiku for this: noxious metal sludge contaminates clear thought, yields venomous waters.
Do that again.
Noxious metal sludge contaminates clear thought, yields venomous waters.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't mention it, but the waves, the cups is the second chakra, water in the traditional system. And here we have your second chakra, which is metal, and it's in its molten form, which makes perfect sense. And, the I see. So we just had a reminder about stilling your emotions, not operating out of fear, not letting them kind of rumble and roar wild, not letting too much wind affect them. And just straight out the gate, the deck says yes. Yes, and we've got that.
This is one that came up in the novel a lot, so I know it offhand. I don't even have to open up the profession deck. I know that this is the one that says, I profess that I feel no obligation to drink the poisonous thoughts of others. And we just said that.
We just said that. Yeah, the deck said plus and. Yeah. That's funny. That's really funny. Yeah, that's really funny. So we have a district reminder, but I feel like it came out because maybe we hadn't gotten far enough yet. I mean, there's something very visceral. We were talking about some mild effects, right, or some disconnection, but here, like you've got the actual image of poison.
Yes,
I think that there's a more careful reminder going back to the third eye. It came up again. I think the focus here, the reminder here, is the people in your sphere, the people that you're listening to, that you're allowing into your area, your water, the winds that you're allowing to be near you are just as important. And as much as we are all connected, not everyone is in a place to be sharing what is needed. Not everyone is in a place to be sharing positive, to be doing something that is helpful to others, that is about the interconnectedness. Some people are vortexes and some people are hurricanes. And
the image in the book is a aerial view of a factory spilling sludge into a river. And frankly, that's how I hear a lot of conversations. I know that's probably melodramatic, but frankly, we need to go back to the Four of Ways for a second and think about whether or not we are the ones who need to say something at this particular moment. The risk being that you will end up looking like an aerial view of a factory just disgorging mercury into a river. The image in the book is quite terrifying.
I live near some famous chemical places that are well known for their toxic dumping and contamination. So it's ever present when
Well, that toxic dumping and contamination is precisely the type of ideas that keep everybody's waters all roiled up, if we want to use, the wave imagery here. I think the card said still your waters.
Still your waters.
So you cannot still your waters if they're being churned full of this flushing of disgusting garbage into that water. So who are you interacting with and why? Is there a reason to have these types of conversations? If you feel like there's something that can be gained for it, fine. But what I realized recently is that it's not my job to convince anybody of anything. I'm going to be 50 years old soon. I know you don't hear it in my dulcet voice, but I'm about to be 50 years old. And I just finally realized that I don't care if you agree with me. I really don't. This is too exhausting. You can be wrong. It's fine. Sit there in your wrongness and be wrong. Just sit there and stay wrong. Fine. Whatever. Live your life. Doesn't mean I have to drink your cloudy water.
There's really a sense of the other in this reading. Like we've come back to it twice, the other. And like you were saying, you don't necessarily need to say everything yourself, but you don't need to take in the words or emotions or emanations of everyone else as well. Sometimes you know that there's things you don't need. And I go back to kind of the holidays that are fastly approaching. We're a week out from Christmas right now as we record. The idea of cutting people off, getting them out of your lagoon, out of your space, moving your boat, sailing away from people, like you talk about in their wrongness, like sailing away from people that are spewing things. Like you don't sail into the hurricane. You don't sail into the storm. You try to sail away from it. So if you can see that, right? If you can see those emanations coming toward you, and you can move and you can reorientate yourself so that they don't pass through you, that they maybe pass over you.
People like to harp on and on and on. It's like, oh, I have a freedom of speech. It's like, and I have a freedom to not listen. Yeah. So you talk all you want. Talk all you want. Say whatever you want. I don't have to listen to it.
Well, I mean, in a spiritual sense, that's true as well. Just because you are connected to people. I think I've seen this myself. Like just because you are connected to others and you want to be spiritual and see the good in people and be positive and happy, sometimes that means letting things go, pulling out of things, being away from things. Sometimes happening. I mean, monks go to monasteries for a reason.
And being aware of toxic positivity.
That too.
So you can find the good in people and you can be happy and you can do it authentically without having to force yourself to pretend that you're happy or satisfied by something. Just because, here's the thing, just because you disagree with somebody doesn't mean that they're bad per se. It also doesn't mean that they're compatible. And that's also okay.
I like that reminder about toxic positivity. It is so easy to feel like you should be happy all the time. You should be at peace, regardless of what's happening to you or what someone's saying to you.
Mm-hmm. To always find the positivity. It's like, okay, I mean, that's fine. But sometimes the only point of positivity is finding a way to escape and survive. Okay. That just is what it is.
Some people aren't there for us right now, and it's perfectly fine to walk the other way.
Mm-hmm. Yep. There's a particular brand of toxic positivity in American culture specifically. I haven't encountered it as much with the French. They're simply, my experience is that they don't feel obliged to be constantly happy and joyous all the time. But there's this strange idea especially going through spiritual circles and religious circles, that you're entitled to always being happy. It's like happy is very overrated. What you should be is content.
I have always said this. It's peace, joy, and grief in the heart chakra. So joy and grief are extremes. They're places that we visit because that's what life means. To love is to experience joy. It's to experience grief because you have the presence of wonderfulness and you have the absence of wonderfulness. But the resting state is peace, or like you said, contentment. It's not a state of happy, joy all the time.
Well, and I hear people say that they're like, and you can access eternal bliss. It's like, I don't want eternal bliss. Can I just have a down day? Can I please just have a down day?
That's the thing. That's the thing. In American culture, it's not a down day. Having a peaceful day is not having a down day. It's just being at rest. The American culture is nothing can rest. Everything must be in motion.
It always has to grow. It always has to be happy. It always has to be polished. It always has to be be. It's like, what? I want to now.
Well, even vacations, like you should have planned something and you should go somewhere and you should accomplish things. It's like,
and you should respond to your work emails. It's like, no, no, I'm going to cancel you on that one. No.
Well, it's very invasive. And even in the way that we talk about it.
Your partner's sending emails at 3 a.m. That's illegal in France. You cannot contact people outside of business hours in France. It's not done. They have 35-hour work weeks. Everybody gets 6 paid weeks of vacation, even if they're bagging groceries. And you cannot contact people when they are away from work. She would be in trouble. And that's the joie de vivre. That's the living that they do in Europe that we don't get here. It's like we're proud of how busy we are.
We are very proud of how busy we are.
I saw a commercial just the other day. I know it's supposed to be spoofing, and yet it's not. This little girl, this is one of these websites that helps people find jobs or whatever. I don't even know all that corporate stuff. I don't understand any of it. Anyway, this girl's walking down the sidewalk. She's like, I have a very busy Saturday. I have 3 birthday parties to attend on Saturdays. I'm like, oh dear. I was like, I had a panic attack watching this commercial. I was like, I don't have 3 birthday parties to attend on Saturday. And I think the point this app was trying to make is that they can help you like be very efficient with managing your time. But it's like, you've got this like 6-year-old girl bragging about how busy she is. And I know it's supposed to be funny, but it's really not.
No, it's indicative. So getting back to our reminder, there is sludge and poison that comes out of others into our waters, into our emotions, into our lives. And getting away from that is fine. Walking away from that is fine.
Sail away.
I know that there's a lot to be said about, family and connections, but I've done that. I've cut some people off, and
I have too.
It does make things better, and it's not selfish. So I think this is a reminder that it's not about selfishness in all of this. You are doing what's best for you as a spiritual creature, and you don't have to condemn anyone. Sometimes the poison is sensitive to you, like allergies. Like not everyone's allergic to peanuts, but to the people that are, it's deadly poison.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes people are just putting out energies that are wrong for you. It's no condemnation. It's just that it's not right for you, and you can't go there. You can't do that. My spouse was considering going to the family Christmas, and we were going to maybe split up, and I was going to go out with my dad, and they were going to go to their family, and then they're like, well, no, I don't want them to comment on me. Like, it's just what they do. It's not horrible. Like, they're not terrible people, but they feel the need to comment on body composition and, skin complexion and, things that don't need to be commented on and that are very triggering to my spouse.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I've pretty much avoided holidays. It's a very strange place that we're in culturally, that we have to think about this so much. But that's, using images of water again, that's the way the tide is turning right now. It is a universal force that is beyond any single one of us to contend with, so we need to navigate it as best we can.
And honestly, just thinking about, where we are, even without the forces of the tides, which are uncontrollable, that are celestial mechanics, you can cause a lot of waves that are very big, and you can cause flooding and devastation just by what you're doing in the world.
What you're saying to people.
And they can cause the same to you.
There are people who have platforms who, frankly, well, I wouldn't have given them a platform, but their words are poisoning everybody's water. And so that's why I personally have just turned it all off.
So be aware, right? So be aware of what's happening in your spiritual world, in your connections. Be aware of what is happening near you, and you have the realization that you don't have to drink it. You don't have to imbibe it.
You don't have to swim in it. You don't have to bathe in it.
So we're going way up high.
Oh, okay.
We have the intersection of the throat chakra and the crown chakra. This is the director, also known as the chariot in the major arcana. If you tell yourself you can, then you will. If you tell yourself you can, then you will.
So it's the flip side to the way words work. The ways in which your words can be very, very empowering and very cleansing and very purifying. So coming up out of these toxic waters and having these other kinds of conversations instead. The way in which, I don't know if you want to keep using water metaphors, the way that, hydroelectric dams work, all that water, all that knowledge, all these words and conversations, spin turbines, cause stuff to happen, and it's productive.
There's something on this card, the chariot, that is about controlling things without directly interfacing with them. And so the director here I have as more of like an orchestra director, like a conductor. They're creating the music that we hear, they're shaping the music that we hear, but they're doing it through influence on all of the musicians. So the conductor, the director makes no sound, plays no instrument, and yet it is their force of will throughout the combination of the instruments and the musicians that creates the music that we hear. So there's this willfulness, this influence. And of course, this is the crown chakra, so it really is the connection to the universe. How is that energy flowing? And then with the intersection with the throat chakra, this is how is your will coming through what you say. So again, we kind of come back to the throat chakra. We've been there. We've been hovering. Now we've got the third eye and the crown, and then we've been dealing with the second chakra. So we're very, in a sense, connecting emotion to connection. So the influential part. So the water in you is influenceable. People's wind, people's energy, people's sludge can influence your waters. You're very much a receptive being, like a glass of water can feel the vibrations of the air around it, of the ground around it. This way seismic shifts create ripples in water. Air creates ripples in water. Water is a very receptive element. And we're looking at the ways that the upper three chakras influence that and work with that. And in this one in particular, there's a question here of what is your will? What is your intention? And what do you do with that connection? How do you manifest that connection?
It's an interesting question. quite a long time ago, my very first boyfriend of my adult life, I remember having a very specific conversation with him about how he didn't think that conductors had a real job. And we had an argument about this because he was like, well, they're all professional musicians. They can all count music. They could start and stop when they want to. And I kept trying to make the point. It's like, but they're like the car and the conductor's like the driver. And yes, they can all play on tempo. And yes, I hear what you're saying. But to say that the conductor doesn't have an actual job is kind of missing the point, because the conductor is the one who chooses which music's going to be played, chooses, well, at the bare minimum, the tempo, but, affects the dynamics and their vision for what the evening's program will look like. That's all coming from the conductor. They are the leader of it, but he did not want to see that. And so when you started talking about the conductor, that was the first place my mind went, was the memory of this argument about the role of a conductor in an orchestra.
Well, nobody sees the rehearsal. And that's the key part. Nobody sees the rehearsal. The rehearsal is done behind closed doors. And there, the director is being very specific. The trumpets, you need to play this legato. Strings, I need this more pizzicato. The French horns, sing out here. Bring out the oboe, bring out the reeds at this point. They're making these interpretations of a written work, but they're putting their own understanding onto it and shaping things. Now, they're not the ones playing it when it comes out. Like, they're instructing, but they're influencing the players to play it differently, because everyone can look at this work and interpret it in their own way. The director, the conductor, is the one who unifies that vision and gets everybody to the same vision of what the music is to sound like, so that when it comes to the performance, they're just there to remind the orchestra and to keep them together, to keep them moving and starting and stopping at points, and holding just the right amount of time, to let the sound reverberate. So it depends on the venue that you play in, but if you play at a venue like a cathedral, you let that sound linger longer. And so there are elements that the conductor adds during the performance, but most of the work is done beforehand.
Yep, exactly. So coming back around to the card, read the card again. If you think it, if you say it.
If you tell yourself you can, then you will.
I'm just trying to chew on that. I feel like I need to hear that right now. We can get into that in the personal section. But I guess one of the questions is, when are you the conductor and when are you the conductor and when are you the orchestra?
Ooh, that's a very good question. And this card is saying to be the director, but the other cards are, there's, what are we saying? What are we playing? What are we putting out? What reverberations are we sending into the universe? Is, also which ones are we receiving? So when is the will of others affecting you?
Well, if we're going to use this kind of conductor imagery, the question was, when are you the conductor and when are you the orchestra? And the answer to that is when you are Prince, or when you are James Brown, or when you are Lawrence Welk, if you prefer. But these are people who actually played the instruments during the performance, and they were the conductor, and all eyes were on them, and they would change stuff in the moment, and they would choose the song order different each night. Prince's band had to have 100 songs memorized so that he could pick one at any given moment, and they would play a different set list every night, and they would play variations on the songs based on what he was doing. And so when you know your message and you can coordinate that out into the world, you can both direct and perform simultaneously. You can be that kind of a maestro. You can be Prince, or James Brown, or Lawrence Welk.
Yeah, there are a lot of instances of that. And then
were they called band leaders? What were the grand bandstand member? What were those things called? He was the
big bands.
The big bands, yeah. So he was a big band master.
Yeah, Glenn Miller, Betty Goodman.
Yeah. So
for all King Cole, Duke Ellington.
Yeah, for all the pop and the funk and the raunch, Prince was still a big band performer.
Yeah, there's a sense of playing as a group and reminding players. I go back to like a quintet or a quartet who generally does not have a director or conductor. They work together, and it's an example of a shared will among them. They'll rehearse together. They'll sense that there will be someone in charge of downbeats and coming together out of a coda or helping it through a retard. There's a sense of flow that someone needs to be there to kind of guide, but there's also a synergy that happens. So I think as much as you are a director in life, like you said, sometimes you're the orchestra and sometimes you're the quartet or the quintet that is syncing together and very purposefully melding themselves together, and being a whole being made up of individual parts.
And sometimes, unfortunately, you're also the evil record label that's stealing everybody's money. So let's just be really honest here. We can all go through different phases in our lives. When are you being terrible?
Well, that goes back to the toxic sludge. I think it's a tough mirror, but the reading is telling us this. We have to also look at when are we the toxic sludge to other people? When are we the toxic sludge?
When are we the river and when are we the sludge?
So as much as the season that we're in makes us think about cutting things out and not allowing sludge into our lives, where are we putting out sludge? Because we always are. We can't not. We have negative, like you said, we are the record label too. We have negative things. We have trauma and scars and hurt and pain, and that all seeps out into the world around us just as much as we want to project positivity and connection and love and beauty. We also leak. And the spiritual work that maybe you're called to do in this reading really, really wants you to take a look at with your emotions, especially with fear undoing the container. Right, fear undermines the earth that contains the water. You're just sort of slopping everywhere. It's like having holes in your container, your holes in your glass, and things are just sloshing and slopping everywhere. Maybe it's time to work on that. So even though the root chakra hasn't come up yet in this reading, it might be a call for you to say, as heady as all of this is, how am I grounding myself to be able to work with these emotions? Because emotions are varied and powerful and they slosh around. They don't like to be held by a container. They only do so, grudgingly. And what are you doing to shape your container? What are you doing to influence the way your emotions are seeping out, being in, what's resonating with them? There's a whole back and forth that's going on that I think we need to adjust ourselves to.
Yeah, it's interesting because with that image of the factory on the river, pouring out all that sludge, there's the factory, there's the river, there's the sludge, and then there's the EPA. So when can you come in and put some standards in place for yourself, both to monitor how you are emanating anything that's toxic or how you are containing it coming from somewhere else? It's like, how do you create your standards? So, I mean, this is, this metaphor is getting kind of extended, but it's fun. So this little mental game here that you can play with yourself is, okay, when am I the factory? What am I making? Is what I'm making putting out something toxic? When am I the river going by absorbing this? But when can I be the overarching institution that can protect or create a separation of some kind between the factory and the sludge and the water? Because the sludge has to go somewhere. If you don't get that sludge out, well, then what? So with this idea of the quote unquote EPA or whatever that is, the sludge exists. So what do you do with it?
How do you safely remove it? And then can you work on the process that prevents it from forming so that you can get to a spiritual place where, maybe you've reached a sort of nirvana of that monks attain, where they don't put out sludge.
Yeah, they don't produce very much of it in the first place.
So there's little work to be done to contain it and refine it and dispose of it appropriately. I think we're going to go one more card from my deck because I just feel like I need a finite capstone to this. I need a single answer. Let's see what we got. All right. So we've gone to the third chakra, and this is the source of flames, and it is, you are the ever-burning flame.
You are the ever-burning flame.
Ever-burning flame.
So you are always in action of some kind.
Yes. And it comes from you. So the idea of the source is that it is within you, that the elements. So as you go through each of the elements, right? As you go through earth, water, here, fire, and you're working on the chakra, there comes a point where you realize that the energy, the material, the essence of that chakra comes within you. It's within your chakra. And so the source is about saying, oh, I realize now that all the fire that I've been working with in my life is really coming from within me. The power is within me in this case. Literally, the power is within me.
That's an interesting idea, because what we were just discussing was the factory, the sludge, the river, and the EPA. Okay, all of those require action of some kind. And we have to be aware of what our role is at any given moment, whether our role is to create a space of active rest, or to take particular actions, or to help others, or to allow ourselves to be helped. These are all interactions with our own energy. So whatever role we're in, whether we're the boat, or we're the one sailing the boat, or we're the water that's holding the boat, we have all these different functions happening. And we are not just one tool. We are not just one shape. There's a lot of water in this reading as a reminder that we change shape constantly. And here we are at the end talking about, being the ever burning fire, the source of fire. You, so long as you're alive, and maybe even after you're not, will always be using and creating and manipulating and shaping energy by your efforts, by your thoughts, by your intentions. And so I would say the way this last card is speaking to me, I feel like this is a reminder to be aware of choice at any given moment, of action at any given moment. Is what I'm doing appropriate to what I want? Is it appropriate to how I want to navigate in the world? So if you're always going to be on fire, as it were, where are you going to channel that energy? And how are you channeling? How big is this fire right now? Does it always have to be a bonfire? Can it ever be a spark? Can it ever be cinders? So looking back over the whole reading, remember perhaps that your perspective can shift, your function can shift, your purpose can shift, your intention, your desire. None of this is static. None of it is solid. Fire is not solid. Water is not solid. Metal doesn't have to be solid. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. I mean, mercury is not solid, and even at room temperature. So allowing ideas and emotions and actions to flow as they need to do so, to fill whatever space is appropriate for whatever purpose is necessary, without, blinding yourself and thinking that you always have to be in a state of bliss all the time.
I like that. That's exactly what I was thinking. Is that, like you said, the spark and the cinders. Sometimes the fire is just a little whisper, and you're at rest. You don't need giant flames. Just like you don't need roiling water. You don't need giant waves. Sometimes you just need still, calm water, and the fire of your creation, of your action, is stilled, and your heart chakra is balanced, and you're at peace. And you can then really think about what emanations are leaving you, which ones are coming in. And, then we get into a whole metaphor of the river and the toxic sludge and all that kind of stuff. But how are you allowing the world around you to influence you? And how are you influencing the world around you? And in your stillness now, you have the power to make the changes, but you can be very concerted in your efforts. You can make surgical changes. And I think that's what I'm hearing at the end of this reading, is that it is a call to work on your spiritual self, on the container of your body and how it influences all these things that are within you and how outside things are influencing you. Work on that. Work on the receptivity. Work on which sail catches which wind, and do you need to turn it so that it doesn't catch that wind? Or do you need to lean into it because it's a powerful wind that you need in order to achieve this change? But ultimately, at the end of the day, the power that you're looking for comes from within you anyway. And you have that power to move, to change, and to interact with those things around you. Well, we have a members-only podcast that is available through Apple subscriptions. So if you want to go to the Apple Podcast app and subscribe there, you can get segments where Jack and I talk about how the reading influences and affects us personally and how we're understanding it for our own lives. So you get a nice little extra segment there with bonus content, which is fun and nice. And you get to know Jack and I a little bit better, which is...
There's so much to know.
There's so much to know. We're very outgoing and we share things that maybe we shouldn't. But there you go.
But that's why we share them.
Yes. We have a YouTube Show Your Deck where you can watch the cards and see the beautiful artwork that Jack and I worked very hard to create. We have books and decks that are both available at showyourdeck.com. If you go to showyourdeck.com, you can get links to our books and our decks to purchase. Jack, where can we find you?
I'm at 49 Haiku. So the number 4, the number 9, HAIKU. On the internet, that would be 49haiku.com. And on Instagram, it is at 49haiku.
I'm Dean Sage Media. Find me. Enjoy it. Don't enjoy it. I don't know. That's just me. I'll be around. We do have an Instagram for the show. It's at Your Deck on Instagram. And we will say goodbye for now.